Good evening, parents. Sorry I'm not there tonight. As you could probably tell a little bit by my voice, I am out sick right now. Still wanted to get you all the information that you need for the back to school night, so let's go ahead and dive right into it. Hello, my name is Josh Feldsher, biology teacher. I also teach AP Environmental Science for seniors. So just kind of getting to a little bit about my class. I do want to start with a little bit about me. So who am I? Who's the guy that's teaching your kids every day? This is my 10th year teaching at GHS, so I've been here. This is the only school I've ever taught at. Love it here. Got no plans on leaving anytime soon. Grew up pretty locally. Grew up, I guess, more adolescent years in Laverne. Moved to Claremont when I was in high school. I went to Damien High School. Had a girlfriend go to Glendora High School. Ended up going to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo for marine biology. That's what my degree is in. And the University of Verne for my credential and master's degrees. So I am finally done with school, and it's nice to be done. Previously worked in as a physical therapy assistant. So the reason I bring that up is because I've got a little bit of background both in the wildlife side of biology, in the marine biology aspect with my degree, but also in more of the, I guess, physical and health sciences related to medical side of biology as well. So I try and bring in a lot of my experiences and examples from my time into the classroom, just as a way of kind of grounding any of the information that we're talking about in the class. So how does my class work? All right. Typical day in my class is going to start out with warm-ups. There, with very few exceptions, there's always going to be one or several warm-up questions posted on the board. Students have been kind of pretty good with this so far. They come in, they get out their science notebooks, and whether they had a test in the class before, whether they got something upcoming, I want them in the mode of, we are in here for biology, we are in here for science, and the warm-up questions kind of like get them settled into the mindset of we're here for biology now. So that just takes a couple minutes, 5 minutes or so at the beginning of class. I go over those. It's not a quiz or anything. It's just to get them settled into reminding them what we talked about previously, get them settled for what we're going to be doing that day. Then it's going to usually be, information input. That's going to come in the form of sometimes lecture notes, sometimes an article reading, but this is where the core of what we are learning that day is going to be like front loaded towards the beginning of class. And then we're going to take that might take 20 minutes to a half hour or so, and then we'll take that into a related activity or lab, depending on time. Now, breaks. So 103 minutes as of this year. That is a long time to ask, especially freshmen who have been used to shorter class periods, to sit still and focus for that entire hour and 43 minutes, right? So I do bake in maybe a 5-minute break about halfway through the class period. Honestly, those 5 minutes go such a long way towards keeping focus in the times that we are doing academic things. So I find baking in a little bit of 5 minutes of you can hang out with friends for a little bit of time, you can take a break, and then we can get settled and get back to that lab or activity that we're doing. It goes a long way to keeping the attention for that. So I do bake in those breaks whenever we can. Again, some days, if we have a longer lab that takes time, we don't have the breaks. But I try and bake those in just to help get students, again, to stay focused in all of that academic time that we have. So 5 minutes goes a long way there. And then we finish up the day. I usually keep them working. It's not busy work. I hate busy work. I'm not doing that for no reason, but trying to apply any things that we're doing in the notes, the articles, any of that information input, try and apply that into different scenarios to make sure that they are fully understanding the information in that. Technology in the classroom. So I use Canvas for everything. Canvas is going to be where I post notes, where I post directions for activities, where I post pretty much anything that the students are going to need to access is going to be through Canvas. That being said, they're not going to end up turning anything into me on Canvas. Canvas is just there. You can think of it as what used to be like a class website. That's what I use Canvas for. I just put everything. If students want to, and I encourage them to do this, if I go at a little bit of a faster pace, if you couldn't tell, I tend to talk a little bit fast sometimes. So if students need to work at a pace that's a little bit slower, I do encourage them. If you want to, while I'm doing the lecture notes, if I'm click through a slide a little faster, you're writing, you don't want to be writing too fast, pull it up on Canvas. It's already posted. I post them the morning before class starts. So it's already posted there. If they want to pull it up and work at their own pace, that is there for them as a resource so that they don't have to, play catch up later in the class period and feel like they're getting behind. So that brings us to the next point here. Chromebooks, laptops, tablets, whatever device that they are using in class, they need to make sure that they have have that available in class because we are using it pretty regularly. Whether it is just to access Canvas, we also have digital textbooks. I have a copy of physical textbooks in my classroom. We also have the digital copy of the textbooks that students can access online or at home if they prefer to use that method. Sometimes we're going to be doing research projects where I have them use their Chromebooks for research or accessing other labs and websites on the Chromebooks, but they should have those available. I do want to be able to use those on a regular basis. The phone policy. This is where I would be directing you guys to look on the side of my classroom. I do have a like the phone holder, the wall phone holder. And as of this year, I'm sure you've been kind of clued into this so far. We are on a no phones turned off at the beginning of class. They are in the pockets. We don't deal with them anymore. That is school-wide policy now, and I am following that policy pretty well. Students are doing well with that. So far, the past couple weeks, I've just had to make a couple reminders to students, but no issues. Once I remind them, they put them up there, turn them off, and we just don't have the phones as a distraction. I used to use them as like in place of the Chromebooks. Now that everyone has the Chromebooks or laptops that they're using, they should be perfectly fine to do any research that they need to on those. They don't necessarily need the phone policy. Excuse me for my pop-ups here. Labs and models. So there are going to be sometimes online labs, online models that I do want to follow along for that. That's just also going to be using the Chromebooks. And again, phones, we don't necessarily need them. If it's an emergency, I'll let them use them. But under very specific circumstances are we going to be using those phones, right? So next thing, probably the most important thing in my class is the interactive notebooks. This is a notebook that they're going to have all year. Everything goes into it. This is what I'm going to be checking for their grades. So I do not check daily work every single day. If I did that, I've had 174 students this year. If I did that, I would not have any time to be able to teach. So what I do with these notebooks is everything, all notes, all warm-ups, all activities, handouts, everything is going to get either written in there, glued in there, stapled in there. Everything goes into these notebooks. They're organized with a table of contents at the beginning. I keep them with their numbered pages. I want to, even if your student is not naturally organized, I'm going to force organization on them to try and keep these notebooks organized so that we can use them as a tool. I use them as a study tool, use them as something we can use all year long. There'll be times in second semester where I'll refer back to lessons that we learned about in the first semester, and I want them to be able to easily find that, and that's why we have these interactive notebooks. As a part of the checking grades, I post grades to Aries as soon as I have them, so whether that's tests, whether that's notebook checks. Those notebook checks, again, I'm not checking on a daily basis. I will check them every 3 to 4 weeks in lump sums, maybe like 20 pages worth of work in there. And that will then be uploaded as a bulk set of assignments that I'm going to post to Aries. So you notice I don't have anything posted to Aries yet. I have not done a notebook check yet. Our first notebook check will be in 2 weeks. Next week will be our first test. So you're going to start seeing grades starting to come in over the next couple weeks as I get those tests graded and as I check those notebooks for the first time and get an assessment of how everyone's coming along. This last point here, all questions are written down. This is just a class philosophy that I have for these notebooks. I want these notebooks to be useful. I don't want them to write down a question or just write answers to a question in their notebook and then come to it a week later as they have to prep for the test and look down. It's like, oh, I just wrote down answers. I don't know what that means. That's useless to me. That it is useless, right? If they're not writing the questions down and writing the answers to the questions or getting that information into their notebook, they're not going to be able to use that as a tool to prep for tests, finals, anything else that might be coming up down the road. So class philosophy is every question that they're going to be presented, unless I explicitly say otherwise, is going to be written down in the notebook so they can use it for review purposes down the road. Grades in my class. Grade distribution, 50% of the grade is a notebook. So everything is that those notebook checks are going to make up 50% of the grade. 35% are going to be individual unit tests, so that'll be the one that we take next week, and then the cumulative finals. So the way that I have this work is that essentially, if students are doing all of their work, they don't have to be a good test taker. They couldn't fail all the tests technically, and if they come in for test correction, so after a week after I finish grading those tests, I'll give them back to them, and I will allow for a full week or 2 weeks test corrections where they can come into me during tutorial. I'll give them their test back, and that becomes an open notebook corrections. So they can use their notes, they can use Canvas, they can use any resources they need to correct the questions that they got wrong, and they can get half of those points back. So if a student ends up getting a 50% as their raw score on a test, they can get that up to a 75% because they can get 25 of those points back. So even if they're not a good test taker, they should still be able to pass my class with a C, getting, as long as they're working on their classwork homework, they're doing well on their notebook checks, at least is they're doing relatively okay, studying as hard as they can, doing well. all students should have the availability to pass my class. The 15% cumulative finals, this is just what we have. We'll have two of them, one at the end of first semester, one at the end of second semester. I find that 15% is just like the sweet spot for, it's not going to completely trash anyone's grades, but it is enough that it matters to everyone. Students that are doing well, students that need just an extra a couple percentage points to get up to, they're on the borderline between a C and a B. That 15% gives them enough wiggle room where if they do well on that final, they can be able to boost their grades. So that's kind of like the distributions that I like to use for my class. Homework policy, I don't really assign homework. There are very few exceptions to this, but pretty much all homework that they're going to have would be classwork that they didn't finish in class. And most of the time, I will say, hey, we didn't have enough time for this. I recognize that. You can have another day to work on this. We will work on this more again in class. But there will also be times where we say, hey, we've had enough time to work on this. If you're not done yet, it is now homework, and they have to get it done at home. Because I'm only doing those notebook checks once every 3 to 4 weeks, though, they need to make sure that they're getting it in around that time by that notebook check. So I will let them know when the first couple notebook checks are coming, but they need to make sure that they are getting all of their work done, whether it's done in class or at home. There are some projects and activities that are going to be done as homework. Late assignments, they're accepted at a 5% penalty per day late. Otherwise, what is the point of a due date? Now, again, I will work with students if there's absences, if they're getting behind because of sickness or something like that. Again, those are exceptions, and I'll work with those students as those come up. But generally speaking, if they're turning in work late, there does need to be a penalty on that. So just as long as they can get that into me as soon as possible, that's going to be great. And that's about all I've got for you. Here is my email, jfeldsher@glendora.k12.ca.us. Please reach out to me by email if you have any questions. You can call me through the phone system, my extension 5415. I will get back to you much quicker if you send me an email. I will check those emails regularly. So if you do have questions about tonight, again, I know I wasn't there. Please don't hesitate. Reach out to me at this email here. Hope you have a wonderful night. Thank you.